Hey everyone, welcome back to FSi DFS. Looking at the 5-game early slate here on DraftKings. It was originally 6, but because Detroit and Pittsburgh got postponed on Tuesday, they're going to be having a double header today, and DK just said, forget it. We're bumping it down to just 5, and that's a big disappointment in terms of pitching because we had Screwball facing off against Jared Jones, and that would have been like SP1, SP2 awesomeness, and now they're gone, and it gets really dicey really fast. Yu Darvish, you can see, is up top here at 8.5K. We'll go to the rankings here in a moment, but in terms of weather, you see a couple rain icons here. I don't think that rain is going to be too much of an issue, if really at all. I think all these games play. I don't expect any delays. I'm not a meteorologist. I'm just going based off of what the phone app says about all the cities during that game time. So word of warning, word of caution, whatever you want to say. Heading over to the pitchers. So Darvish really got just trounced in his last start against the Yankees, but I'm not looking too deep into that. He's looked really solid over the course of the season so far. He had a phenomenal stretch before that Yankees game, but the strikeout rate for Darvish is not as high as I would hope it to be. Still, pretty solid strikeout to walk ratio, and comparatively to all the other pitchers on the board, I'm going to have my most interest in Darvish here. I trust him the most. He's got just a phenomenal matchup facing off against this weak Miami Marlins offense. So I'm going to be going with Darvish as my number 1. After him, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go with Garrett or if I wanted to go with Sanchez. This Miami-San Diego game and the Philadelphia-San Francisco game, they're both the lowest over-unders on the board at 7.5. So Vegas is expecting some decent pitching performances here. Darvish, again, based off of the matchup, I give him the slight edge there. But after him, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go Sanchez or Garrett. Sanchez, he's going to be on the favored team. Philly is the slight favorite. Miami is an underdog in their matchup. So I do tend to lean Sanchez a little bit more. Sanchez, a very similar strikeout rate to Yu Darvish. Sanchez, I also like that, he's more of a ground ball pitcher. He's going to be limiting a lot of the damage. He doesn't have as many blow up games as Garrett has in his 2 of his 3 starts. But Garrett, on the other side, he looked insanely good in his last start. He was inducing quite a few swinging strikes, which is awesome. He's also a ground ball pitcher, but still, I think given the matchups, honestly, and just the possibility of going for the win, I'm going to give the slight edge to Sanchez. But if you want to go with Garrett there, no argument against that. And then Harrison, I really don't have a whole lot of interest in Harrison here up at the top. I don't know. I feel like facing off against Philly as a fly ball pitcher just kind of screams potential disaster. You can see in the past 3 games, it hasn't gone too well here for him. Even playing at home in a couple of those starts, he's still allowing quite a few earned runs, and the walk rate is creeping up on him as well. So Harrison, he's there. Don't have a whole lot of interest in him, but I still have more interest in him than I do a guy like Paxton. Paxton's facing off against the Mets. One thing to pay attention to with that Mets lineup is Francisco Lindor going to be in or out. Lindor got injured. He took a pitch on the finger when he was attempting a bunt, and he stayed in the game, but it wouldn't shock me if overnight swelling just takes over and they rest him for a game or 2. But either way, if Lindor's in or out, it's not going to change my outlook or my mindset on Paxton. Going into the cheap tier, Dunning and Peterson. Peterson's going to be making his first start, major league start this season after coming off the 60-day IL. I do wanted to highlight here an article that I did find with him. So he's had a handful of starts so far. He started in Double-A or Low-A, went to Double-A, then he was all the way up into Triple-A in his last start. He went over 5 innings in those starts. So, you can see 89 pitches. He's pretty much fully stretched out here. Things went really well, 35 strikeouts in 23 innings. Again, we're talking about a major league pitcher playing in low A, padding a little bit of stats there. But one quote from Peterson really that, I found extremely interesting is that last year was atrocious for him. He did not do well at all, but he was pitching through hip discomfort, as you can see here, and it just got worse and worse and worse, and it was bad towards the end. Doctors opened him up, found a torn labrum in his left hip. That explains why he was probably really, really struggling. But what Peterson said here, just this week, said it's a night and day difference how the hip feels. Completely different. He feels like he is ready to go. So he's fully stretched out. He's cheap. He's got a whole lot of confidence here. But the matchup against the Dodgers is a little bit terrifying. But I wouldn't hate, throwing in a few sprinkles of Peterson and a nice GPP, just because pitching is so limited here on this slate. And then Dunning facing off against Arizona. Arizona, they struggle against right-handed pitching, so I'm always going to have a little bit of interest in there. Again, like most pitchers on this slate, not a super great, strikeout rate that you're getting excited for, but nobody does. Nobody does, really. Pitching is pretty devoid of everything, but regardless, Dunning, I don't mind him as a nice cheap option. They're all cheap options. Nobody's in the highest salary tier. As you can see, nobody's in the high salary tier. Don't play Detroit or Pittsburgh. Heading over to the bats, St. Louis and Cincinnati they're going to be your two front runners. This is the highest over/under game. The winds are going to be blowing out. It's in Cincinnati, which is a great hitter's park, as we all know. Montas, not a great pitcher. Payance for St. Louis is probably going to be more so of like a bullpen game for St. Louis, but regardless, I love both sides for the bats in this game. Cincinnati, on their side of things, the possibility that they're going to have a leadoff hitter for Hurtubise. Again, I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, but 2.6K could be a leadoff on the highest implied total on the entire slate. So definitely could have some interest in him there. Do you need to go that cheap? Not really. Like, when your most expensive pitcher on the entire board is only 8.5K, salary's not going to be too much of an issue. But I'm definitely going to be having some interest in Ellie De La Cruz. Hasn't been performing as much as of late, but still, at home, his home road splits are pretty drastic. So I'm going to have interest in De La Cruz. For Ellie, he struggled, so yeah. But Candelario, Benson, Martini and Benson are going to be lower in the lineup more than likely. But still, those are two bats who have been doing well. I would have interest in them if I was going with that Cincinnati stack. Even a nice wraparound, with Benson and Martini could be a nice way to get a little bit different with Cincinnati. On the St. Louis side of things, Paul Goldschmidt, he's heating up. I mean, after an absolutely atrocious and dismal start to the season, he's been doing very well as of late. The home runs are coming. It does help, playing in playing in Cincinnati for a couple of games, but he's been doing very well. Sub 4K Goldschmidt, who's very hot and facing off against a bad pitcher in a small ballpark with winds blowing out. I really, really do like this spot here for Goldschmidt. Other Cincinnati guys that I'm going to be having interest in is going to be Nootbaar, Donovan, Burleson, Arenado. Man, Arenado just can't seem to figure it out. I don't know what's going on with him. Kind of disappointing. But Cincinnati and St. Louis are definitely going to be the front runners here for offenses. Texas, they're going to be right after them. They're facing off against Nelson. Nelson allows a lot of hard contact. But I think given the environment and the pricing and all of that stuff, I do put Texas a little bit lower than Cincinnati and St. Louis. Not to say that they're a bad stack or a bad play by any means. They're definitely going to be in play. Wyatt Langford coming back off of the IL, which he was on for quite some time. It was a couple of weeks. he had a rough start to the season, but still, this is one of the most hyped prospects coming into the season in the entire league. Not saying the most, but one of. So Wyatt Langford, certainly going to be interested in him there. And yeah, really anybody on Texas, because Nelson just allows so much hard contact. You really can't go wrong. Over into the GPP, I already talked about Philadelphia. They're facing off against Harrison. Harrison's a fly ball pitcher, and I really think that these Philadelphia right-handed bats certainly can get to him. Dodgers facing off against Peterson. Just because you don't really know. I don't really know. Peterson's looked solid in the minors. He's fully stretched out. He's looking good. He says he feels drastically night and day difference compared to what he was pitching last year, which was just yikes. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what goes on with them. You're going to be able to fill in or jam in those Dodgers bats. Not going to be any issue at all, just because, again, pitching is just so meh on this slate. But if I was going to be, condensing it even more so than it already is, I would definitely stick to the pitchers in the Miami-San Diego game and in the Philadelphia-San Francisco game. Leverage, I do expect that, this Miami-San Diego game to get the highest ownership for the pitching, so you might get some leverage with those bats from either of those teams. So we are going to be having a main slate preview for the night slate. I think it's 7 games. So that's going to be coming out on Wednesday morning. I'm recording this the night before. We'll get that out tomorrow morning. But yeah, good luck in your contest. Thanks for watching. Again, Pittsburgh, Detroit, not on the slate. Just don't play them. And yeah, good luck. Get off of St. Louis and Cincinnati if you don't want to play chalk. See ya.